Why are the prices of printer ink so expensive? If you ever own a printer, you'll know what I'm talking about. In fact, prices for printer inks are so expensive, it costs more than petrol. Yes, petrol. According to an article from Business Insiders in 2021, a gallon of ink can cost you $12,000. Some original equipment manufacturer claims that the technology to make ink is expensive. But is that really the whole truth? Upon further research, we found out that it is actually due to their pricing tactic. This man, he's King Cam Gillette, founder of the Gillette Company, inventor of the pricing tactic following the razor and blade business model. Gillette employed this tactic to sell the razor handles at such a cheap price that it is basically free. But the replacement blades, however, are expensive. Just like in our printer's case, prices of printers are now really cheap. You can get a brand new printer for less than $100. But the prices of printer cartridges, however, are expensive. The razor and blade model is a nice way to put it. But to put it more bluntly, it is called the tie-in sales model. The first good is commonly called the tie-in goods, and the second good is called the tied goods. The former is usually sold at a cheap price, possibly even at a price at which the company suffers a loss from selling the product. But the company gradually earns back their money from the sales of tied goods, which consumers are sort of forced to buy in order for the tie-in goods to be of any use. Let me give you an example. In the razor and razor blades example, the razor handle will be the tie-in good, and the razor blade will be the tied good. In our printer and printer ink's case, printer will be the tie-in good, and the printer ink will be the tied good. Without the razor blade and printer ink, printers and razor handles are nothing but a piece of plastic.
Okay, so now let's take a look at why companies tie their goods together. The main reasons are to earn profits and increase their market dominance. Looking around us, there are actually many examples of tied goods. One main example brought up by Renkee is the printer and the ink. Globally, the printing industry is forecasted to reach $821 billion in revenue by 2022. Some dominant players in this industry include Canon, Brothers, and HP, who hold 17.7%, 10.7%, and 24.5% of market shares respectively. This can be attributed to their intensive research and development, churning out various innovative and high-quality printers. However, these firms would first need to earn a substantial amount of profits in order to invest in R&D extensively. For the printing industry, this is achieved through tying of ink and printer together to implicitly enforce consumers to buy their specific brand of ink in order to use their printer. Take a look at the following graph. Assuming the original demand for ink is at D, and since this industry is oligopolistic in nature, profit-motivated firms will price their goods at PE and produce QE amount of goods, as it is the equilibrium point where MC equals to MR. The original cost will be at PC, and the profits earned will be the yellow shaded box. With an increase in demand for ink, as consumers are now forced to buy the same brand of ink together with their printers, demand curve shifts right from D to D prime, and a new equilibrium will be at where MC intersects the new MR prime, at price PE prime and quantity QE prime. This increase in demand increases the scale of production, resulting in an increase in economies of scale as larger production allow for more use of efficient capital equipment and discounts from bulk buying of raw materials. This causes a downward movement along the MC and AC curve, where firms enjoy more cost savings as seen in the cost decreasing to PC prime, causing profits to increase as shown in the pink box. Now let's take a look at why time affects the market power.
Tying of goods occurs mainly due to the price elasticity of demand. Basically, the firms will target a group of people who often use the goods as they will keep buying the tied goods since their PD is inelastic. So how can firms benefit from this? Firstly, it increases market power. If a user buys a printer from firm A, they will have to buy the ink from there too. This means that a firm will hold on to customers for a long period of time. In the ink market, customers will not be able to buy from any other firms as they are forced to buy from firm A. This guarantees profits for the firm. Subsequently, other ink firms will lose out on this group of customers as the customers cannot buy from other firms. With other firms having less profits and firm A continuously gaining profits from its guaranteed customers, firm A will increase its market power in the long run. With supernormal profits, they can conduct R&D to beat other firms. In addition, it also increases the barriers to entry for new ink firms. Newer firms will be less attracted to join the industry as customers will not switch to their products as they aren't able to. Secondly, it extends power to other markets. Using Apple as an example, Apple dominates many markets. It has Apple Watches, phones, earbuds, laptops, computers, and even headphones recently. Through its ecosystem, for example, its unique charging system, software, iCloud, and Apple Care, they're able to ensure a loyal group of customers. In addition, Apple produces everything in-house, which is something firms who do tying often do to be more efficient. How does this benefit Apple? Firstly, they can control their production line, allowing them to lower their cost of production. Secondly, they continuously conduct R&D. As everything is produced in-house and they can follow their own unique ecosystem, Apple continuously finds ways to become more efficient. Thirdly, when Apple ventures out to other markets, they will have a loyal customer base who will buy from them. This guarantees revenue. Through all this, Apple will reap economies of scale. Firms like Apple who dominate more than one market will subsequently earn revenues from more than one market. Therefore, tying allows firms to extend their market power to other markets.
So now many of you might be thinking, tying of goods suck. It forces me to buy extremely expensive printer ink from a single company, and it makes it hard for me to opt out of Apple's ecosystem if I ever wanted to. And it seems like the companies win and I, the consumer, lose. Well, there is some truth to that. In reality, the story isn't so simple. In fact, you might actually be benefiting from this whole tying scenario. How, you ask? Well, let's consider an example. There are two people who want to buy a printer to print some stuff. First, you have Jess. She's the owner of a small company and she wants to print a ton of copies for a marketing campaign. So she needs to buy one printer and 50 ink cartridges. That makes her a high usage user. And then next you have Neo. Neo is a student who only needs to print a couple of assignments, so he buys one printer and maybe 5 ink cartridges. He is a low usage user. So first let's look at what would happen without tying, right? So the company would sell both printers and ink at their profit maximizing prices. And let's assume that is $500 for the printer and $5 for the ink. In total, Jess would need to spend $750 in this scenario, and Neo would have to spend $525 to meet their needs. Next, let's look at what would happen with tying. So the company would reduce the price of printers below the profit maximizing price, let's say to $250, and compensate by increasing the price of printer ink to say $20, and ensuring that the cartridges are only compatible with their own brand of printers. Now let's see how much Jess and Neo would have to pay in this scenario. Jess would have to pay $1,250 total. That is $500 more than before. And well, you might say, well, point proven, tying is bad. But let's look at what happens to Neo. Since he is a low usage user, he actually ends up paying only $350 in this scenario, which is $175 less than before. So in reality, whether or not you win or lose from tying arrangements depends on your own level of usage. Now let's expand this idea from individuals to a society, specifically consumers. We will use the idea of consumer welfare to estimate how much all consumers benefit or lose from tied goods. For simplicity's sake, let's assume that the quantity of goods demanded doesn't change according to the price. Thus, changes in consumer spending would entirely represent the changes in consumer welfare. Let's look at two scenarios. In the first scenario, you have 100 high usage users like Jess and only 10 low usage users like Neo. Overall, since Jesses lose, and there are a lot of them in this society, the consumers actually see a net welfare loss of $48,250. Now let's look at the second scenario, where there are only 10 Jesses and 100 Neos. Since Neos win in a tying arrangement and there are a lot of them here, consumers actually see a net welfare benefit of $12,500. And this is actually akin to what our society is actually like. There are a large number of low usage everyday users who benefit from a tying arrangement at the expense of a few high usage consumers like big business owners. So you at home likely benefit from the more expensive printer ink, even if that seems counterintuitive at first. But then you might think, why do printer companies choose to tie when it allows consumers to spend less? Well, the simple answer to that is that low usage users simply won't buy the printers without tying because the printers would be way too expensive. So the tie-in arrangement not only improves consumer welfare, but it also allows the printing company to sell to more consumers too. It really is a win-win scenario. Well, except for the Jesses.
And now, let's see what the legal implications of tying goods are. The traditional concern of tying arrangements was leverage, which means the fear that a firm with a monopoly in one product could create a second monopoly by requiring purchasers of the first product to purchase the second product from the firm as well. However, tying arrangements are not necessarily unlawful. Antitrust concerns are raised by tying arrangements to the extent that they are used to maintain or increase the seller's pre-existing market power or damage competition in the market of the tied product. In the US, tying can be challenged under 4 provisions of the antitrust laws of Sherman Act, Clayton Act, and FTC Act. Judicial treatment of tying has vacillated over time, and now US courts are significantly less hostile to tying arrangements, as they have been informed by economic learning and scholarship about pro-competitive rationales for tying. In Singapore, the law acknowledges that supplying products as part of a tied arrangement is a common commercial arrangement which may be intended to provide buyers with products in more cost-effective ways. However, they are aware that an undertaking that is dominant in one market may use a tie to leverage this market power into another market in order to foreclose its competitors, and this could raise competition concerns under the Section 47 of Competition Act. Under European law, these practices are prohibited under Article 101 and Article 102 of the Treaty Foundation of European Union. The circumstances that have to be met are the following. First, the accused undertaking has a dominant position in the tying or tied product market. The next step is to determine whether the dominant undertaking tied 2 distinct products. This arises problems in the legal definition of, for example, what will amount to tying in scenarios of selling cars with tires or selling a car with a radio. Hence, the Commission provides guidance on this issue by stating that 2 products are distinct if, in the absence of tying or bundling, a substantial number of customers would purchase the tying product without also buying the tied product from the same supplier, thereby allowing standalone production for both products. Next issue is whether the customer was coerced to purchase both the tying and the tied products, which, in situations of contractual stipulation, it is clear that the test will be satisfied, but it is not that clear in technological tying. Like the printer example, where there is no written provision stating that when you buy the printer you have to buy the ink, but because of how the printer is made, you actually have to buy that type of ink, because the printer would not work if another type of ink was used. Subsequently, the defense available for the dominant undertaking is that tying is objectively justified in that it brings benefit to the customers and/or enhances efficiency, and thus the courts will be willing to consider these types of claims. Thanks for watching. We hope you have liked the video. See you next week.